Sometimes the most interesting puzzles aren't made by the biggest brands. Today we're building a puzzle from a company many puzzlers have probably never heard of, JR Puzzles. This is their picture map of Africa, a 500-piece puzzle released back in 2011. I found very little information about it online, so today we're going to find out whether it's a forgotten gem or whether there's a reason nobody talks about it anymore. Welcome back to Pierre Solves. I build puzzles from all sorts of brands, from household names to obscure second-hand finds, and today's puzzle definitely falls into that second category. What caught my eye immediately was the artwork. It's a beautifully illustrated map of the African continent, packed with wildlife, landmarks, and colorful detail. My first thought was, this looks like it's going to be a really enjoyable build. My second was, it's a thrift store puzzle, so there's a good chance it isn't complete. After a bit of friendly haggling and buying a small stack of puzzles, we agreed on a price that worked for both of us. It was cheap enough that if it turned out to be missing a piece or two, I wouldn't be too disappointed. That's one of my rules with second-hand puzzles. If I'm paying more, I always ask for a return policy. If it's inexpensive, I'm happy to take the gamble. So let's see if that gamble pays off. This is a 500-piece puzzle from 2011 from a brand I've never built before, and I'm curious to see how it's held up over the years. Will the quality still be good? Will the artwork be as enjoyable to build as it looks? And will all 500 pieces be in the box? Let's get started, and I'll let you know how it goes as we build. As usual, I started by flipping every piece face up while pulling out the edge pieces. That part took me around 7 minutes. Now that's a little slower than normal, but I was also doing some early sorting as I went. Looking at my sorting strategy, you can see I've got the edge pieces here, and I've already separated the dark red pieces for the top of the puzzle. That's where I plan to start the build. Next, I sorted out the pieces for the puzzle title, a picture map of Africa, followed by the rest of the dark red section across the top of the image, which represents Europe and Asia. And just look at this artwork. It's already making a great impression. There are so many interesting little illustrations scattered across the map. One thing that did surprise me though was this title. I assumed it was only printed on the box, but it's actually part of the puzzle itself. It's an interesting design choice, and it makes for the perfect place to start the build. From the very first piece connection, I noticed that this is quite a loose-fitting puzzle. That means I won't be able to pick up and move connected sections without them falling apart. I'll have to keep that in mind as I build. If I need to join sections later, I'll probably have to slide them carefully across the table instead of lifting them. For now, let's get that red section built. Once it's finished, I'll have a much better feel for the overall quality of the puzzle and whether that loose fit is something worth complaining about or a complete non-issue. Right, that red section came together much quicker and more easily than I expected. Looking at the box, you'll notice that many of the countries are grouped by color. So my next plan is to tackle the purple and pink countries. So first, I did a quick resort of the remaining pieces, pulling out all of the purple and pink pieces. By this point, my overall build time was sitting at roughly 31 minutes. Having finished that red section, I now have a much better feel for the overall quality of this puzzle. I can now confirm that this puzzle is a very loose-fitting puzzle. Even two connected pieces can't really be picked up. You have to slide sections across the table instead. Surprisingly though, I don't see that as a negative. The pieces are well cut, so I haven't come across any frustrating false fits. The cardboard has a nice, sturdy thickness to it, and the artwork is absolutely beautiful. Overall, the puzzle feels really nice to handle. I also did a little digging into the brand. JR Puzzles isn't one you hear much about today, and information is surprisingly limited. One thing I discovered is that JR doesn't actually stand for Junior, a common misconception. The company itself no longer exists, so these puzzles are no longer available new. If you'd like to own one today, you'll need to keep an eye on the second-hand marketplaces like eBay or your local thrift and charity shops. That also means if this copy turns out to be complete, I'll feel like it's quite a lucky thrift store find. Let's build up the next few countries and see what other little illustrations catch my eye. With the red section complete, I turned my attention to the pink and purple countries, gradually building them into several small islands across the map. The progress was steady and this part of the puzzle wasn't too difficult. The pink and purple sections make up some of the smaller color groups on the map, so they were easy to identify and knock out early. By the 53-minute mark, this is how the puzzle was starting to take shape. Down here we have the Central African Republic with a baby springbok. Uganda made up just 4 pieces. And here's a rather cute hyena over Nigeria. Moving further south, Zambia and Zimbabwe are grouped together with a zebra that's almost complete, while Gabon features some colorful fruit. And finally over Somalia, where you can clearly see the distinctive shape of the Horn of Africa beginning to emerge. And that brings us back to the previously completed Europe and Asia section. From here I worked through the yellow countries, then the green ones, slowly filling in everything in between. To be honest, I completely zoned out during this part of the build. It was just one of those really enjoyable puzzles where you settle into a rhythm and suddenly you realize you've made far more progress than you expected. Those are my favorite kinds of puzzles. You put on a podcast or some music, get completely absorbed in the build, and before you know it, a few hours of the day have disappeared. I absolutely love that. By the 1 hour and 51-minute mark, I've finished the entire African continent. All that's left now is to complete the surrounding ocean. This feels like a good place to call it a day, so I'll be picking up the build again tomorrow to finish the puzzle. Before we do though, let's take a moment to appreciate just how much detail has been packed into this artwork. Every country has something different to discover and it really rewards taking a closer look. Here's Cameroon, one of the countries I've been fortunate enough to visit. I remember just how incredibly humid it was down there. And down here is South Africa, where I live. I really like the illustration of Table Mountain. It captures one of the country's most iconic landmarks beautifully. I'll see you tomorrow and we'll finish this puzzle together. Day 2 arrived and it was perfect weather. A bright, sunny day and the perfect conditions for a bit of puzzling. One thing I really enjoy about filming during the day is how the natural light brings the colors to life. Everything just looks so much better on camera. Yesterday I made some really good progress with the African continent now complete. All that's left is the surrounding oceans and hopefully all 500 pieces are here. As you can see, there are a lot of blue pieces left on the table, so I expect this final section to be more challenging than the continent itself. Let's see if that actually turns out to be the case. More importantly, I'm really hoping every single piece is here, because I've genuinely enjoyed building this puzzle. I'd love this thrift store find to be complete. Either way, I'll know soon enough. As we place the final pieces in of this puzzle, let's reflect on the journey. Overall, this wasn't a particularly difficult 500-piece puzzle. The different colored sections naturally break the puzzle up into smaller builds, and the illustrations are so detailed that there's always something interesting to focus on. Even the blue ocean, which I thought was going to be the hardest part, turned out to be much easier than I expected. Although the image looks very busy at first glance, it never felt overwhelming. I actually found it to be a really relaxing and enjoyable puzzle to build. My final build time came in at 2 hours and 24 minutes, definitely not speed puzzling material, but I still enjoy keeping track of my times and challenging myself to improve with each build. The puzzle wasn't missing any pieces either, and that was a huge relief. I'd enjoyed this build so much that it would have been genuinely disappointing if it had turned out to be incomplete. Instead, this one will definitely be joining my growing collection to be enjoyed again on another day. The artwork was the reason I bought this puzzle in the first place. It immediately caught my eye on the shelf, and now that it is fully complete, I honestly think it looks even better than it did on the box, especially sitting here in natural sunlight. In summary, I genuinely enjoyed this one. The artwork is beautiful, the piece quality is good, there were no frustrating false fits, and the cardboard feels sturdy and well made. My only small criticism is the loose fit, but even that turned out to be a complete non-issue and certainly didn't take away from the enjoyment of the build. If I ever come across another JR Puzzles puzzle, I'd happily pick it up based on this experience that I've had with this one. And that brings us back to the question I asked at the beginning of the video. Is this a forgotten gem, or is there a reason nobody talks about it anymore? For me, it's definitely a forgotten gem, and if you ever come across one on the second-hand market, certainly give it a try. Next, as usual, if you'd simply like to enjoy the puzzle coming together, I'll leave you with an overhead time lapse of a second build, followed by a more creative cinematic edit, both with no commentary. I'll check back in with you once these are finished. And that brings us to the end of another build. I hope you enjoyed following along and perhaps learnt a little something about this rather obscure JR Puzzles release. I certainly had a great time building it, and I'm really glad this thrift store find turned out to be complete. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like and consider subscribing. Thank you for your support, it really does mean a lot. If you'd like to see more, you can also find me as Pierre Solves on Instagram and TikTok, where I share shorts and other puzzle-related content between my longer YouTube videos. Also, feel free to explore the playlists here on the channel, which are growing with content every week. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again in the next build. Until then, happy puzzling.